We are here today, as we were here just 6 months ago, telling all of you, the same folks that were in this room, that something had to be done. And unfortunately, when our constituents, when our neighbors opened up their Eversource and UI bills, their utility bills, just a couple weeks ago or a week ago or so, they saw what we said would be a problem 6 months ago. We told all of you in this room, we told the majority in the legislature that we had to do something then, immediately, that our ratepayers, our neighbors, our constituents couldn't afford to live in what is already an unaffordable state to begin with. We begged for them to take up these proposals. These were completely rejected, summarily, most of which never even got a public hearing. They were not interested in addressing the issues we felt had to be addressed. And we're here today to say enough is enough. Our ratepayers are paying too much. There is zero reason Connecticut should be the second highest state in the United States of America when it comes down to electricity rates. It has to end. So once and for all, we had the proposals we came to you with in February. The ARPA stuff is out the window. We have ways we can address that, we believe. But that was one aspect of the proposal. That was then used for operational expenses instead. But we did ask for the ARPA funds to be used towards mitigating this moratorium expense and softening this bill. And then also looking at the future and finding ways to stop the bleeding essentially from these exponentially rising electricity rates. So we're here once again to call on the governor, call us into special session now. This is an emergency. Let's address this issue. Let's stop the bleeding, and let's once again make our electric rates in this state affordable. It is ridiculous where we've gotten to where we've gotten. The majority has done nothing about it, and we're once again here telling them to let's do something about it. We're here today to do something about it.
I had a constituent the other day that came up to me and asked me why his electric bill was $2,000 for a month. I live in New Milford. We're not talking about the Gold Coast here somewhere. $2,000. It's ridiculous. But I'm happy we're here. I'm actually really happy we're here to discuss some of this. One of my big pushes that I had, and we all stepped up for, was the public benefit charge to be seen on the bill. The public benefit charge has been something tucked into the bill for years. Now the transparency is there. And that's a tremendous help for people to be able to see. And quite frankly, that's why the constituents are so fired up and quite frankly, ticked off right now. As well they should be, because they can finally see all these extra fees that is the government just reaching in again for extra money, big grab, further taxation in a new way. As Vinny mentioned, back in February, we came out here and we proposed using some of the ARPA dollars.
The common sense is we carried this moratorium for 4 years, which is way too long. It's way too long. The RAM adjustment calls for about a fifth of that RAM adjustment to be to pay back some of this money on the moratorium. Common sense would be, let's be fiscally responsible, take those ARPA funds that we have, and while there's great ideas, everyone has great ideas in this building, we're chock full of them, but the smart idea is a little fiscal responsibility. Let's take those ARPA funds and pay that down, because all these people were paying their bills this entire time should not be covering that for the rest of the state. Those ARPA funds should be allocated to cover the RAM adjustment. And I'm not telling Pura how to do their job. We're offering a solution. We're not here to point fingers and cause problems. We're here to present solutions for everybody. So I think it's a common sense solution that will drive people a little more acceptable to where they feel they need their bill to be. We got a lot more work ahead of us, but this is one step we can make as a common sense solution for every ratepayer in the state. Thank you.
Why did we get ARPA dollars? It was post-pandemic. Why did we let people not pay their bill for 4 years? That's post-pandemic. It aligned properly. But in the meantime, that money is now in higher education. I'm not saying it's not a great cause, but that's not what that money was intended for, and it's not where it should be used best. I kind of equate it to if someone asks you to dinner. Vinny, you want to go to dinner? I invite them out to dinner, we go to dinner, then I ask the entire restaurant to pay for our dinner for 4 straight years. That's unacceptable. No one in that restaurant expected that. No one asked for that. No one had any input to that. They're just being told, you're buying. Well, I do want to say one more thing, too. A couple of months ago, the majority party wanted to come in and rediscuss the big green monster, which would only have increased the dollars on the bill from this point, too. We're asking to go to special session again to drop that down. The people are screaming from the rooftops. It's time we do something. Let's get politics aside, put the people first, and bring that bill down.
You know, it does feel like Groundhog Day all over again. I think it was about 6 months that we were in this very room suggesting proposals to mitigate the problems that we've seen with our electric bills. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take before the other side of the aisle would actually acknowledge our proposals and incorporate them for relief for the taxpayers. You know, we are all just as outraged as our residents when they opened up their electric bill and saw the massive inflation to their bill. And now we see electricity joining the chorus of other items like gas and groceries that are hitting Connecticut residents. And to me, when we see the wake of surpluses and money, you know, overflowing into the pension funds, our higher education institutions receiving the bulk of the ARPA funding, government is the beneficiaries of itself, not the people. You know, we were frustrated when the Democrats decided to so-called not do a budget at all and left it up to the governor to make all the decisions and all the fixes. You know, today it shouldn't be lost on any of us that the FAC committee is going to be upstairs transferring upward of $75 million to take care of our state workers for a pension shortfall that we were statutorily obligated to make, that the Democrats didn't put in their budget, that Republicans actually had incorporated into our budget, and they are today ignoring 3.5 million residents who have been hit with electric bills and are afforded no relief. So today you're going to hear from a couple of our proposals that we've already have brought up in the past. And I think I want to just touch on PURA. You know, we talked about needing to separate PURA, but even more specifically, to make the appointments that are statutory obligated to make. We are supposed to have 5 members on that commission. Right now, we have 3. There's 1 new appointment. I believe there might be someone retiring. The other 2 are serving at the whim of the governor. And the significance of that is now we've seen our electric decisions go from an autonomous body to an organization that has moved into a spare room in the governor's office where they're making decisions behind closed doors, and it's being micromanaged by our governor's office. That is not the way our electric rates are supposed to be done. And so this burden is falling on us to try to come up with solutions. We should be looking at the procurement process. We are on the heels of an RFP being approved to procure wind.
We are here today, as we were here just 6 months ago, telling all of you, the same folks that were in this room, that something had to be done. And unfortunately, when our constituents, when our neighbors opened up their Eversource and UI bills, their utility bills, just a couple weeks ago or a week ago or so, they saw what we said would be a problem 6 months ago. We told all of you in this room, we told the majority in the legislature that we had to do something then, immediately, that our ratepayers, our neighbors, our constituents couldn't afford to live in what is already an unaffordable state to begin with. We begged for them to take up these proposals. Most of these were completely rejected, summarily, most of which never even got a public hearing. They were not interested in addressing the issues we felt had to be addressed. And we're here today to say enough is enough. Our ratepayers are paying too much. There is zero reason Connecticut should be the second highest state in the United States of America when it comes down to electricity rates. It has to end. So once and for all, we have the proposals we came to you with in February. The ARPA stuff is out the window. We have ways we can address that, we believe. But that was one aspect of the proposal. That was then used for operational expenses instead. But we did ask for the ARPA funds to be used towards mitigating this moratorium expense and softening this bill. And then also looking at the future and finding ways to stop the bleeding essentially from these exponentially rising electricity rates. So we're here once again to call on the governor, call us into special session now. This is an emergency. Let's address this issue. Let's stop the bleeding, and let's once again make our electric rates in this state affordable. It is ridiculous where we've gotten to where we've gotten. The majority has done nothing about it, and we're once again here telling them to let's do something about it. We're here today to do something about it.
I had a constituent the other day that came up to me and asked me why his electric bill was $2,000 for a month. I live in New Milford. We're not talking about the Gold Coast here somewhere. $2,000. It's ridiculous. But I'm happy we're here. I'm actually really happy we're here to discuss some of this. One of my big pushes that I had, and we all stepped up for, was the public benefit charge to be seen on the bill. The public benefit charge has been something tucked into the bill for years. Now the transparency is there. And that's a tremendous help for people to be able to see. And quite frankly, that's why the constituents are so fired up and quite frankly, ticked off right now. As well they should be, because they can finally see all these extra fees that is the government just reaching in again for extra money, big grab, further taxation in a new way. As Vinny mentioned, back in February, we came out here and we proposed using some of the ARPA dollars.
The common sense is we carried this moratorium for 4 years, which is way too long. It's way too long. The RAM adjustment calls for about a fifth of that RAM adjustment to be to pay back some of this money on the moratorium. Common sense would be, let's be fiscally responsible, take those ARPA funds that we have, and while there's great ideas, everyone has great ideas in this building, we're chock full of them. But the smart idea is a little fiscal responsibility. Let's take those ARPA funds and pay that down. So all these people were paying their bills this entire time, should not be covering that for the rest of the state. Those ARPA funds should be allocated to cover the RAM adjustment. And I'm not telling Pura how to do their job. We're offering a solution. We're not here to point fingers and cause problems. We're here to present solutions for everybody. So I think it's a common sense solution that will drive people. We've got a lot more work ahead of us, but this is one step we can make as a common sense solution for every ratepayer in the state. Thank you.
Why did we get ARPA dollars? It was post-pandemic. Why did we let people not pay their bill for 4 years? That's post-pandemic. It aligned properly. But in the meantime, that money is now in higher education. Not saying it's not a great cause, but that's not what that money was intended for, and it's not where it should be used best. I kind of equate it to if someone asks you to dinner. Vinny, you want to go to dinner? I invite him out to dinner, we go to dinner, then I ask the entire restaurant to pay for our dinner for 4 straight years. That's unacceptable. No one in that restaurant expected that. No one asked for that. No one had any input to that. They're just being told, you're buying. Well, I do want to say one more thing, too. A couple of months ago, the majority party wanted to come in and rediscuss the big green monster, which would only have increased the dollars on the bill from this point, too. We're asking to go to special session again to drop that down. The people are screaming from the rooftops. It's time we do something. Let's get politics aside, put the people first, and bring that bill down.
You know, it does feel like Groundhog Day all over again. I think it was about 6 months that we were in this very room suggesting proposals to mitigate the problems that we've seen with our electric bills. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take before the other side of the aisle would actually acknowledge our proposals and incorporate them for relief for the taxpayers. You know, we are all just as outraged as our residents when they opened up their electric bill and saw the massive inflation to their bill. And now we see electricity joining the chorus of other items like gas and groceries that are hitting Connecticut residents. And to me, when we see the wake of surpluses and money, overflowing into the pension funds, our higher education, institutions receiving the bulk of the ARPA funding, government is the beneficiaries of itself, not the people. You know, we were frustrated when the Democrats decided to so-called not do a budget at all and left it up to the governor to make all the decisions and all the fixes. You know, today, it shouldn't be lost on any of us that the FAC committee is going to be upstairs transferring upward of $75 million to take care of our state workers for a pension shortfall that we were statutorily obligated to make, that the Democrats didn't put in their budget, that Republicans actually had incorporated into our budget, and they are today ignoring 3.5 million residents who have been hit with electric bills and are afforded no relief. So today you're going to hear from a couple of our proposals that we've already have brought up in the past. And I think I want to just touch on PURA. You know, we talked about needing to separate PURA, but even more specifically, to make the appointments.
Cast blame. We're here to offer solutions as House and Senate Republican caucuses. And that's why over the past 2 years, we have consistently put forward long-term energy proposals that we think will reduce costs. In fact, we know will reduce costs for the long term, while also shoring up reliability of the electricity grid and ensuring that we protect our environmental considerations as well. We have updated, but we mostly are reiterating those proposals from the last 2 years. First, we need an all of the above clean energy strategy in this state. We should not have the state constantly picking winners and losers among sources of clean energy. That means all forms of nuclear, all forms of hydro, and other more reliable and affordable forms of clean energy should be on equal footing in the state's renewable portfolio standard with wind and solar and other sources of energy. We need to cap the rate that the state forces procurements for energy in our state. The state forces us to buy certain types of energy at a fixed long-term rate. Maybe they need to do that, but it shouldn't be at the cost 2, 3, or 4 times higher than the competitive market for electricity. We need to cap those government-directed purchases of electricity. We need to shore up our natural gas supply, especially for winter, especially when we see demand rising for electricity in the long run. It is not acceptable to have elderly or sickly people in the future have to worry about whether they're going to be able to heat their homes on 0-degree days. But we all know that that is the direction New England and Connecticut are heading in 10 or 20 years' time. So we need to study actionable ways for the state to shore up a more affordable natural gas supply, especially for the winter, that could help reduce costs for our electric grid, make it actionable both from the west and from the east. We need to look at moving all those public policy charges out of your electric bill and into the normal appropriations and budgetary process, whereby it competes with all other important sources of government spending and government programming, but is evaluated every 2 years for its costs and benefits on the merits. I think that's only fair. Some of these programs should continue to exist, but they should be reevaluated and tweaked through the normal budgetary process. You should not be forced to pay a hidden tax in your electricity bill every month as a matter of course. That is contributing to Connecticut having the highest electricity rates in the country. We should look at restructuring our energy regulatory bodies, yes, so there is more certainty, so there is more independence, and so that customers can have more certainty about the regulatory structure in Connecticut, that they will not be subject to, shall we say, malfeasance by any of the utilities as well. There is so much we can do in this state to make Connecticut more affordable for everyone, to grow our economy, to ensure that seniors on a fixed income or lower income families do not have to choose between their rent, their medication, their electricity bill, or anything else from month to month. We need to create jobs. We need to make our economy grow. We need to make Connecticut better than ever before. We can do that by going into special session and reforming our energy policy in this state to make it more affordable for the short, medium, and long term. All of us are confident that we can do that. All of us believe in governing, in leading, not just casting stones. That's what this announcement is about.
Hello, this is State Senator Ryan Fazio. This month, so many of us opened our electricity bill to see yet another increase in electricity rates. That's unacceptable in a state that already has the second or third highest electricity rates in the continental U.S. This month's increase was due to an increase in the public benefits portion of the bill, which is roughly 15 different government programs that are funded through our electricity bills. That's a hidden tax as far as I'm concerned. And the specific increase this month was due to the socialized costs from a shut-off moratorium in Connecticut to unpaid electricity bills that was open-ended, that anyone was allowed to avail themselves of, even if they were a millionaire, even if they're in good health. That lasted far longer and was far more open-ended than in other states, and so our arrearages that we're all paying now through our electricity bill were far greater than in other states around the country. I actually co-authored a plan earlier this year that would have called for paying off those arrearages with the one-time federal monies. That plan was rejected by the majority leadership, unfortunately, and therefore we're stuck with this bill, this increase in rates this month that we never should have been stuck with in the first place. But more importantly, Connecticut's electricity costs have been too high for too long for any number of reasons.
Hey everybody, back home. I'm here with some of my favorite constituents. My kids, my family comes first, but they're great constituents of mine, and they're also great resources and representatives for the districts back home, Pat and Bill. We were up here today trying to fight to reduce these energy rates. All of you saw it when you opened up your mail this past week and saw the ridiculous increase you've seen in your Eversource bills. And we were up here today saying enough is enough. We're asking to go into special session to make short-term and long-term changes to our electric rates here in Connecticut to make it much more affordable. Connecticut is unaffordable to begin with. We're the second highest energy rates in the entire country. That is unacceptable. We're asking to go into special session immediately. It's an emergency. You deserve better from your government, and that's what we're up here talking about today. In addition to these two great men being the representatives in the 30th District, they're also the ranking member of Environment. We are here today, as we were here just 6 months ago, telling all of you, the same folks that were in this room, that something had to be done. And unfortunately, when our constituents, when our neighbors opened up their Eversource and UI bills, their utility bills, just a couple weeks ago or a week ago or so, they saw what we said would be a problem 6 months ago. We told all of you in this room, we told the majority in the legislature that we had.
All right, welcome everybody to the Mike Sinello Show. I don't know why we're having so many problems with the, I gotta change the camera. All right, I don't know why we're having so much problems with the preview video. I guess my NDI source has failed. So folks, you'll have to just bear with me while I try to get this fixed.
We are here today, as we were here just 6 months ago, telling all of you, the same folks that were in this room, that something had to be done. And unfortunately, when we are here today, as we were here just 6 months ago, telling all of you, the same folks that were in this room, that something had to be done. And unfortunately, when our constituents, when our neighbors opened up their Eversource and UI bills, their utility bills, just a couple weeks ago or a week ago or so, they saw what we said would be a problem 6 months ago. We told all of you in this room we had to do something then, immediately, that our ratepayers, our neighbors, our constituents couldn't afford to live in what is already an unaffordable state to begin with. We begged for them to take up these proposals. Most of these were completely rejected summarily, most of which never even got a public hearing. They were not interested in addressing the issues we felt had to be addressed. And we're here today to say enough is enough. Our ratepayers are paying too much. There is zero reason. The ARPA stuff is out the window. We have ways we can address that, we believe. But that was one aspect of the proposal. That was then used for operational expenses instead. But we did ask for the ARPA funds to be used towards mitigating this moratorium expense and so it's an emergency. Let's address this issue. Let's stop the bleeding, and let's once again make our electric rates in this state affordable. It is ridiculous where we've gotten to where we've gotten. The majority has done nothing about it, and we're once again here telling them that let's do something about it. We're here today to do something about it.
I had a constituent the other day that came up to me and asked me why his electric bill was $2,000 for a month. I live in New Milford. We're not talking about the Gold Coast here somewhere. $2,000. It's ridiculous. But I'm happy we're here. I'm actually really happy we're here to discuss some of this. One of my big pushes I had, we all stepped up for, was the public benefit charge should be seen on the bill. The public benefit charge has been something tucked into the bill for years. Now the transparency is there. And that's a tremendous help for people to be able to see. And quite frankly, that's why the constituents are so fired up and quite frankly, ticked off at them. That's all they should be, because they can finally see all these extra fees that is the government just reaching in again for extra money, big grab, further taxation in a new way. As Vinny mentioned, back in February, we came out here and we proposed using some of the ARPA dollars.
The common sense is we carried this moratorium for 4 years, which is way too long. It's way too long. The RAM adjustment calls for about a fifth of that RAM adjustment to be pay back some of this money on the moratorium. Common sense would be, let's be fiscally responsible. Take those ARPA funds.
ARPA dollars. It was post-pandemic. Why did we let people not pay their bill for 4 years? That's post-pandemic. It aligned properly. But in the meantime, that money is now in higher education. I'm not saying it's not a great cause, but that's not what that money was intended for, and it's not where it should be used best. I kind of equate it to if someone asks you to dinner. Vinny, you want to go to dinner? I invite them out to dinner. We go to dinner. Then I ask the entire restaurant to pay for our dinner for 4 straight years. That's unacceptable. No one in that restaurant expected that. No one asked for that. No one had any input to that. They're being told, you're buying. I do want to say one more thing, too. A couple of months ago, the majority party wanted to come in and rediscuss the big green monster, which would only have increased the dollars on the bill from this point, too. We're asking to go to special session again to drop that down. The people are screaming from rooftops. It's time we do something. Let's get politics aside, put the people first, and bring that bill down.
You know, it does feel like Groundhog Day all over again. I think it was about 6 months that we were in this very room suggesting proposals to mitigate the problems that we've seen with our electric bills. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take before the other side of the aisle would actually acknowledge our proposals and incorporate them for relief for the taxpayers. You know, we are all just as outraged as our residents when they opened up the electric bill and saw the massive inflation to their bill. And
ago or so, they saw what we said would be a problem 6 months ago. We told all they were not interested in addressing the issues we felt had to be addressed. And we're here today to say enough is enough. Our ratepayers are paying too much. There is zero reason Connecticut should be the second highest state in the United States of America when it comes down to electricity rates. It has to end. So once and for all, we had the proposals we came to you with in February. The ARPA stuff is out the window. We have ways we can address that, we believe. But that was one aspect of the proposal. That was then used for operational expenses instead. But we did ask for the ARPA funds to be used towards mitigating this moratorium expense and sending this bill. And then also looking at the future and finding ways to stop the bleeding essentially from these exponentially rising electricity rates. Once again, on the governor, call us into special session now. This is an emergency. Let's address this issue. Let's stop the bleeding. And let's once again make our electric rates in this state affordable. It is ridiculous where we've gotten to where we've gotten. The majority has done nothing about it, and we're once again here telling them to think about it. We're here today to do something about it.
I had a constituent the other day that came up to me and asked me why his electric bill was $2,000 for a month. I live in New Milford. We're not talking about the Gold Coast here somewhere. $2,000. It's ridiculous. But I'm happy we're here. I'm actually really happy we're here to discuss some of this. One of my big pushes that I had, and we all stepped up for, was the public benefit charge to be seen on the bill. The public benefit charge has been something tucked into the bill for years. Now the transparency is there. And that's a tremendous help for people to be able to see. And quite frankly, that's why the constituents are so fired up and quite frankly, ticked off right now. As well they should be, because they can finally see all these extra fees that is the government just reaching in again for extra money, big grab, further taxation in a new way. As Vinny mentioned, back in February, we came out here and we proposed using some of the ARPA dollars.
The common sense is we carried this moratorium for 4 years, which is way too long. It's way too long. The RAM adjustment calls for about a fifth of that RAM adjustment to be to pay back some of this money on the moratorium. Common sense would be, let's be fiscally responsible, take those ARPA funds that we have, and while there's great ideas, everyone has great ideas in this building, we're chock full of them. But the smart idea is a little fiscal responsibility. Let's take those ARPA funds and pay that down, because all these people were paying their bills this entire time, should not be covering that for the rest of the state. Those ARPA funds should be allocated to cover the RAM adjustment. And I'm not telling Pura how to do their job. We're offering a solution. We're not here to point fingers and cause problems. We're here to present solutions for everybody. So I think it's a common sense solution that will drive people a little more acceptable to where they feel they need their bill to be. We got a lot more work ahead of us, but this is one step we can make as a common sense solution for every ratepayer in the state. Thank you.
Why did we get ARPA dollars? It was post-pandemic. Why did we let people not pay their bill for 4 years? That's post-pandemic. It aligned properly. But in the meantime, that money is now in higher education. Not saying it's not a great cause. But that's not what that money was intended for, and it's not where it should be used best. I kind of equate it to if someone asks you to dinner. Vinny, you want to go to dinner? I invite him out to dinner. We go to dinner. Then I ask the entire restaurant to pay for our dinner for 4 straight years. That's unacceptable. No one in that restaurant expected that. No one asked for that. No one had any input to that. They're just being told, you're buying. I do want to say one more thing, too. A couple of months ago, the majority party wanted to come in and rediscuss the big green monster, which would only have increased the dollars on the bill from this point, too. We're asking to go to special session again to drop that down. The people are screaming from the rooftops. It's time we do something. Let's get politics aside, put the people first, and bring that bill down.
You know, it does feel like Groundhog Day all over again. I think it was about 6 months that we were in this very room suggesting proposals to mitigate the problems that we've seen with our electric bills. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take before the other side of the aisle would actually acknowledge our proposals and incorporate them for relief for the taxpayers. You know, we are all just as outraged as our residents when they open up their electric bill and saw them.
All right, folks, welcome to tonight's episode of the Mike Sanello Show. Senator Steve Harding will be joining us. State Senator Steve Harding will be joining us momentarily. Apparently, we're having serious issues with the NDI here. It's just technical difficulties that we're having. Here, let me get this filter taken care of. Okay. All right. So it seems to me like things are coming in choppy in terms of video. If you guys find it unwatchable, let me know. It looks like we've got Facebook. Is it at least working? We've had to rebuild the Facebook stream. I don't know why. I hit go live. Everything was working fine. And then about 60 seconds later, everything just exploded in my face, technical difficulties. And I don't know what the solution is. So just, like I said, Steve's going to be joining us in a minute. I'm going to beg you guys to kind of share this link right now. I'm hoping we're live on Facebook here. Let me go ahead and pull up Facebook just to make sure we are live. So again, you'll have to bear with me, folks, as we're having some technical difficulties here. We should be starting momentarily. Let's see. Am I live here? Am I live here? Videos. Go to videos. Okay. So again, you guys will have to bear with me. Right now, I'm hoping things are working at least on YouTube from that end. I can't seem to tell if things are working on the Facebook end. Dashboard. There we go. Save changes, I guess. Okay, so I don't know what's going live going on with Facebook. So we're gonna pull in Steve, and I'm gonna try to build this this thing on Facebook while we bring in Steve. So without further ado, Steve, say hi. Yeah, so at least we're on YouTube. So let's just get right into the heart of the thing because we're running really late too on top of all of that. So first things first, folks, we will get to your Q&A, but Steve and I are going to have a conversation to get the basics out of the way. This is for you guys. So again, you're going to have to share the heck out of this so people can see it. Because again, we had a total failure of the stream on Facebook, so you're going to have to bear with me while I rebuild something. But in the meantime, those of you watching on YouTube, please share. And we're going to get to that. So Steve is the state is the state senator from my district, Connecticut's 30th district, and he's also now the state minority leader. So for the line of questioning that I have in my mind, the way this is going to go about is that there's kind of two categories here to talk about. One is the public benefits part of our electric bills. Two is the overall rate increases that seem to have taken place over the last month or two. And then three are solutions. As far as I'm concerned, I'd really like to stick to Eversource since that's what I know and that's what electrical service I have, and it seems to be the much larger supplier. We can talk about UI. You can include that if you want, Steve, but for folks watching at home, that's my area of understanding of things. So, you're going to have to bear with me again, understanding that I don't really know much about the UI half of this. So first things first, Steve, what is this? What is the public benefits charge?
legislature that essentially is more expensive than the market rate.
Oh, damn it, Steve. Hold on. I think people might have had you muted. So, I hate that I have to do this, but everything we just went over in terms of Q&A, we're going to get to that. So, Steve, what is like the 30-second version of what the public benefits are? And what they go to?
Yeah, so it's a hidden tax, and it's all these different programs related to energy, social programs, renewable energy programs that essentially is supplemented by the ratepayers, and it's baked into a public benefit charge, essentially. That's essentially what the public benefit is.
So like, what are the categories that they go to? Let's start with what's the primary driver? What is the bulk of what those things go toward?
The bulk of it is social programs related to energy. The moratorium was one aspect of it recently that led to an uptick, but there's also energy assistance programs and the like that are probably the largest part of your public benefit. And then there's supplemental programs in which the state of Connecticut procures energy resources at a higher rate than what the market rate is because they're green initiatives or whatever the case may be. That's probably the secondary aspect of your public benefit that the ratepayer is being forced to pay.
So like, as far as the primary driver, well, what caused the rate increase over the last 2 months, and where are these things coming from in the first place? Why are we paying for these things?
So the biggest uptick that everyone noticed in the public benefit was related to the Millstone contract because, as I mentioned, nuclear energy, which is what Millstone sells, and the state of Connecticut is contracted to purchase from Millstone at 5 cents per kilowatt hour, is slightly higher than what the market rate is currently.
Why?
So, because natural gas is cheap right now, and so they've driven the market rate down to what it currently is at. Like, for example, Millstone, believe it or not, last year provided a credit to the ratepayer because nuclear energy was actually less expensive than what the market rate was, and what natural gas was essentially. So that's the reason why is natural gas is the market rate is lower. Therefore, the nuclear contract we have at 5 cents a kilowatt hour is higher than what the ratepayers would otherwise be paying, and therefore that's why you're seeing that supplemented in this public benefit. That was the biggest driver for this particular increase this time around.
So where does that originate from? Why is that rate locked in? Where's it come from?
So there was legislation, I think back in 2017, I think was the year, it might have been, it was around 2017. And essentially the state of Connecticut and the legislature voted to have the state of Connecticut and DEEP execute a contract with Millstone to purchase nuclear energy at this 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And the reason being for it, many argued, was that because Millstone was a big employer out on the eastern side of the state, and they needed basically a budgeted amount, sustainability in what they would be paid for nuclear energy to be able to budget, to be able to grow, et cetera, to be able to stay open, keep their doors open. So that's essentially why I voted against the measure, because I felt that the western side of the state was essentially subsidizing the eastern side of the state in their electric bills. There's not a lot of employees in the 30th district that work at Millstone, if any, and therefore we're paying for essentially a subsidy. But believe it or not, as I mentioned, in the previous year, nuclear energy was being sold at less than what natural gas was, and Millstone was actually the contract we had was was a benefit to the ratepayer. We were actually paying less by what we contracted than what we would otherwise be paying on the market for nuclear energy. So it cuts both ways. I think the biggest problem, Mike, more than anything else, is the overall social aspects of the public benefit. I think a lot of us, for the energy assistance, I support that, but that should not be baked into a electric bill. That should be part of the state budget. The public benefit should not be baked into your electric costs. It just shouldn't be. It's driving up a significant amount of electric bills recently. It's going to continue doing that. And frankly, if the state of Connecticut wants to invest in initiatives that are going to force the state to procure these energy resources because they're green but are extremely expensive, or add social programs to the that relate to electricity and providing electricity in our state, that should be done on the state budget, prioritized, discussed. Shouldn't be done baked into a hidden tax on a public benefit charge.
All right, so folks who are just tuning in, again, I've had to rebuild the Facebook stream, so everybody please share this, especially to the Ban the Public Benefits page. So that's where people are going to see it, and it's from New Milford. Please share this to the New Milford page. Again, I had to nuke the Facebook page, the Facebook feed, because we had technical difficulties earlier, so please share, so people can get in on this, and people can get their questions answered from Steve. So with that said then, as far as the moratorium is concerned, so we were basically paying part that. How much would you say a percentage of the public benefits charges total? Let's say not the increase, but the total thing. Is that's that question number one. And then number two, if that's what we're looking to put, let's say, on the budget, what does that do? Like, what does that do in terms of the taxpayer? How do we save them money in the end? Because if it's just coming out of their taxes anyways, is that actually costing ratepayers the same amount of money?
So, I mean, it would be, one would argue, be more equitable, because there's nothing more aggressive than charging somebody the same amount on your electric bill, right? But more importantly, more than anything else, to me, why I prefer it is, one, I think it will save folks money, and the reason it will is because these programs will see the light of day, forcing the state of Connecticut deep to procure energy resources that are 3-4 times what the market rate is for other energy resources. I can guarantee you, if there was a budget discussion about that, it would get shot down because you'd have to raise taxes to do it. The problem with how this operates is that no one is held accountable. We create these programs. We don't have to do anything within our state budget to do it. We force DEEP to procure these unaffordable energy resources. And then ultimately, you as the ratepayer get forced to pay it in a hidden tax on your electric bill in this public benefit charge. So I think because of transparency purposes, and because legislators will actually be held accountable for the policies they support as it relates to energy and electricity in our state, I would think you're going to absolutely reduce the costs. Because budget is about prioritizing. And I would think that some things on here as it relates to the public benefit are worthwhile. And most of us, myself included, would agree to invest in it. But I'm sure there's a handful of things that are quite expensive that I would disagree with, and many other reasonable legislators would disagree with. And then ultimately it wouldn't get forced onto the taxpayer and also wouldn't be baked into this hidden cost.
So if that's the solution here, and let's say we have a $250 portion of the bill because I have my bills right here, and doesn't amount to that. I live in a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment. I wouldn't have even noticed this if people didn't start bringing it up on social media, to be honest. But let's say that the percentage of your bill that's public benefits is 25% for an easy number, and let's say the public benefits portion of your bill is an even $100, right? So let's say that that's the case. How much? In fact, yeah, let's say it's $100 for even numbers. If you could wave a magic wand today and get all of the things you want done from a policy standpoint, how much does that reduce that $100? A rough guess.
So are you talking about like the special session, like emergency stuff?
So
Or
yes,
we're
you guys
talking
have
about
called for
long-term goals?
Well, let's do the short term, right? Because
Yeah.
I tried to have video at the beginning of this stream. Unfortunately, again, technical difficulties, folks, of everything that's been kind of said about all of this in terms of solutions, especially. And one of the things that was brought up was the calling of an emergency special session,
Yeah.
to bring everybody back into session. So let's just start with that. What would that do? What's the plan once you come back into session?
One of the proposals is to move the public benefit charge onto the state budget. So
Okay.
that whatever your public benefit charge is now, let's say it is $100, your electric bill would be reduced by $100 because you'd be moving the public benefit charge and finding efficiencies within our state budget to pay for it, as opposed to putting it on the backs of the ratepayers. And then I think going forward into future sessions, some would argue, all right, you're putting some of this on the taxpayer dollars, which you're kind of shuffling the board to some extent. I don't totally disagree with that. But as I said before, it's ultimately going to lead to reducing the charge for both taxpayers and ratepayers, in that a lot of these, well, I don't want to say a lot, but a significant amount of these programs, particularly these subsidies, if you had to find the funds in the state budget and prioritize that and be held accountable as a legislator for supporting these policies, they would never get approved. And the taxpayer wouldn't have to foot the bill for this either. Again, the reason why you're seeing this public benefit charge rise exponentially, and frankly continue to do so probably for that matter, is because it's a hidden tax that no one is held accountable for. Pura, which is an unelected entity, essentially approves these rate increases. They are not held accountable to anybody other than maybe the governor. But at the end of the day, the legislators who create a lot of the policies that have driven up the cost of energy in our state, particularly as it surrounds the public benefit, as you discussed, are not held accountable for these increases and these policies that have driven up these increases. I think if you held them accountable and put it in the state budget, you would see rationale and common sense come into play, and actually see these programs be lifted off, particularly the supplemental programs that are not social programs. They're just simply programs that force us to purchase unaffordable energy resources, frankly.
Okay, so then what's the medium-term goal here, right? Because I know what the long-term goal is, right? The long-term goal is some sort of free market solution where, well, if we could really wave a magic wand, like decades from now, it's probably what it would take, because you need political will to do some of the stuff that I don't think there's political will to do, like opening up a free market for generation that we really kind of don't have, to allow for more.
Yeah, the monopoly has not worked. To your point, Mike, the monopoly clearly has not worked for us in the state of Connecticut. We have the second highest electric rates in the continental U.S., so we're doing something significantly wrong here.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be like significantly off from the surrounding states, right?
No, we're the number one is Hawaii, and they live on an island. And as my good friend Ryan Fazio says, number two is California, and they've lost their mind. So then you're left with us, and Connecticut somehow is just being neck and neck behind Hawaii and California.
Yeah, if I may just like, oh no, I can't. We're not going to do that. All right. So yeah, I mean, I have here on USA Today that we are behind Hawaii at number one by a mile because it's Hawaii. Rhode Island, believe it or not. And then, yes, California because they lost their minds. And Massachusetts is just ahead of us now. I'm not sure exactly what the date is, but I think this is 23. So that's still, we're still way more expensive than New York even. And New York is right there. Right. So why the heck is that the case? Now,
I would think that the recent data would put us at number three, because everything I've read thus far in my research on this, it puts us there currently. So that might have unfortunately risen for us over the past year.
Okay, so those are long-term goals that are probably not going to happen at all anytime soon. So if we're just moving that $100 to the taxpayer through the budget process, what percentage of that dollar amount do you think, let's say by the next legislative session, would get slashed on the budget? Let's say it's $100 on that public benefits part.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I have to look and see what the supplements are in terms of what our ratepayers are now being forced to supplement. But I could say up to half, maybe up to $50 of that probably are not social program related. And I think there are other programs within that, like educational programs, marketing programs, that may not just be necessary. We'd have to see what exactly, again, this is the positive thing about putting it on the state, putting it into the state budget, is that there's a whole process that is analyzed and audited and vetted as you create a state budget, which is not being done currently with this hidden tax and the public benefit charge. So let's have a discussion about what marketing program is baked into this public benefit cost. If you put it on the state budget, you could actually have an analysis of what are we marketing? Is it worth it? Is it getting anything done for us? And I'm sure there's plenty of things that we're paying for within that public benefit that are just not doing anything for the people of the state of Connecticut. And I would argue probably as much as $50 of that $100 would probably be something that most people would look at and say, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we paying for this in a public benefit charge, or paying for it or investing in it altogether, for that matter? So that's one. I think two is, as it relates to what the Republicans in the Senate and the House are calling for in this special session, one of our biggest talking points is utilizing state funds, particularly the unallocated ARPA funds, to pay down this moratorium, because the second biggest driver behind this current increase that we're seeing in the public benefit relates to this moratorium that the state of Connecticut has had on shutoff of electric for 4 years now. It's gone years and years beyond really any other regional state in terms of this moratorium that was implemented during COVID. And now what we're seeing, based upon this recent increase, is the ratepayers are now being forced to pay for this moratorium. And so one of the things that we've proposed as House and Senate Republicans is using these unallocated ARPA funds and then finding any other funds that may be available to the state, to the ratepayers, the hardworking people of the state, and then using it to pay off this moratorium, which is about over $200 million of this public benefit increase relates to that moratorium, which we propose to be paid off.
And the funds were there in February?
Oh, yeah. In February, all of the funds were there.
How would that, so how would that affect things long term? Is this a portion of the bill that's a one-time fee?
The moratorium was only a one-time fee because the moratorium only was for a period of 4 years. It's now over. So it was estimated to have cost the utility companies $200+ million because they couldn't shut people off. They can't collect in some cases. So it's cost them over $200 million in cost that the government mandated through this moratorium that went years beyond really any other state did during this COVID moratorium. And so it's a one-time fee, essentially, that we as the ratepayers are being forced to pay in this public benefit to pay off this moratorium, quote unquote. And so what we had in our proposal as Senate and House Republicans is to use the unallocated ARPA, which back in February was over $300 million we had. So we actually had more money in unallocated ARPA funds than what we needed to actually fully pay off this moratorium. And we, the Democrats, the majority in the legislature, determined that they wanted to use the ARPA for other things, basically for operational expenses, which is fiscally irresponsible in and of itself, but that's probably a story for another show of yours at some point later. But we could have used the ARPA funds back in February to pay this moratorium off.
So I'm going to ask you two more questions about the public benefits before we go on to the overall. I'm hoping, folks, if you chime in, if you're having trouble hearing the audio, I know the video has become completely, basically dead. So at least we're getting the audio, and that's what matters the most, right? So folks at home, we are going to get to your Q&A shortly. So if you've got questions, just get them in. Just get them in, and we'll get to them as soon as we possibly can. For now, Steve, the last two questions before I get on to the overall rate increases. So the reason I even know about this is because of this Facebook page called Ban Public Benefits Charge Eversource UC. Let's see if I can get that to come in on your end so that you can see that video. Let's go to virtual camera. Here we go. Oh, no, you can't see that. All right. Well, that's too bad. Well, it's on the recorded version, so folks, I'll upload this whole thing in its recorded form. So the two things that I'd love to hear from you, Steve, have you seen this page? And the thing that this page really primarily drives towards is, well, again, I really wish I could show you this, but apparently we're having video technical difficulties on this end too. This is a change.org petition to demand Governor Lamont and Pura to cease public benefit charge from the electric bill. Have you seen all of this first?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree with them. I think the public benefit should be eliminated from the electric bill, and should be discussed in within the confines of our state budget. They're right. They're upset. The ratepayers are upset for good reason, and they should be. So I have seen the page, and I agree with the premise of their page and what they're looking to do. And that's part of the Senate Republican and House Republican plan is, again, to shift this cost off of the electric bill, ban it essentially, and then analyze these investments that are being baked into a hidden tax and being paid by the ratepayers, and finding finding programs that this public benefit is quote unquote funding, and if it's important enough to fund, find the money within our state budget like we do with any other program.
So would you actually be on board with the petition? I know it doesn't really mean anything from a legislative standpoint.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean that is within our Senate Republican and House Republican proposal is, again, to ban essentially this public benefit charge and shift it off of the bill, shift it onto the state budget, have a discussion about prioritizing the investments that evidently this public benefit is supposed to fund. As I said, I'm sure there are some things that we would find in the legislature, that at least the House and Senate Republicans would, that is not worth forcing the taxpayers of the state to pay. But it shouldn't be baked into a hidden cost with a public benefit, which frankly is only going to go up if certain proposals that Senate and House Republicans have been essentially begging for since February, and even before that, don't get passed. This public benefit's only going to go up from here.
All right, so people also have been talking about, and this I don't know very much about, the overall rate increase. So it seems that people are suggesting that there's an overall rate increase that goes beyond the public benefits charge. Are you seeing that? Is that the case? What's the story with that?
Well, I mean, rates are unaffordable to begin with in this state. I mean, if that's what they're pointing to, they're exactly right. Eversource and UI can do far better. Our state, in terms of our policies and finding affordable and efficient energy resources for the ratepayers in the state, could do far, far better, and we haven't. The monopoly that these utility companies have has clearly not worked for us and needs to be reevaluated. These are all things that have to be. So the rates are unaffordable, but I mean, in terms of, the public benefit was the driver, essentially. That and usage were the drivers for this significant increase in the recent bills. If you look at simply supply and generation, and the rates, quote unquote, from where they were last year, the bill actually should have went down. So the rates have slightly gone down. Not to say that we're anywhere close to where we need to be in terms of providing better and more affordable rates. We're not. We have a lot of work to do.
All right.
But
so just to add,
that's really why the public benefit is such. There's such outrage and understandable outrage over the public benefit charges, because it significantly increased bills in a manner in which many bills should have went down from where you looked at in the previous year, based upon the rates actually being slightly reduced.
So to your point here, if I go through supply, my most recent bill is 0.08. Well, it's 8.995 cents per kilowatt hour, and the previous bill had, it was the previous bill that was a singular bill, because this is a prorated bill, because I guess the rate change happened mid-month. But the previous month that I have a full rate, that I have the contiguous race for the same thing, is 14.714 cents per kilowatt hour. So on supply, it seems to have actually gone down in rate by it looks like about 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Right. And then on transmission, it seems to have gone down from 3.992 cents per kilowatt hour to 3.301 cents per kilowatt hour. And then, the whole delivery thing, there's a bunch of different charges in here that are, some of them are going up, some of them are going down. in an instant, I can't tell you what the net is. It looks to me to be a similar rate. And it seems to me like you're right, that the uptick is coming primarily from these public benefits charges, which in June was 5% of my bill. In July was 13% of my bill. And in August, the one I just paid is 25% of my bill. So quintupling the percent of my bill in 2 months that is going toward these public benefits. So we talk kind of about some solutions here. One of the solutions that has been proposed is bifurcating DEEP and PURA. Why and what's that going to do?
Well, I mean, I think that's more of a long-term thing, but I support the measure, and I think most of our constituents, when they hear this, would support it because, you know, technically, PURA is accountable for DEEP. It's under the auspices of DEEP. So even though the commissioners of PURA are appointed by the governor, essentially their boss, by virtue of the fact that they are a entity within DEEP, essentially their boss is the commissioner of DEEP. And frankly, the commissioner of DEEP has led many different programs, initiatives, advocacy points that support many different initiatives, which frankly significantly increase the electric rates in the state of Connecticut. These are programs, this is legislation, bills that she has supported, and DEEP in general has supported. Even taxes and fees being tacked on to your electric bills and energy rates. These are all things that, frankly, she has had a track record, and DEEP has had a track record of supporting many initiatives in the recent years that are exponentially driving up electric rates. And PURA, being under the auspices of them, it makes it unsustainable in terms of two different organizations, in that PURA is supposed to be there primarily, in my opinion, to be the watchdog for the consumer, to be the organization that oversees the utility companies and ensures that the consumer is receiving a good product at an affordable rate, and doing whatever they can to prevent unreasonable rate increases and unaffordable rate increases, for that matter. It doesn't make any sense that you have that organization with which, in my opinion, I just listed what their goals should be and why I believe they were created in the first place, being under the guise of, frankly, a commissioning organization in DEEP that has done nothing but advocated policies which would exponentially rise electric rates and fees in the state of Connecticut. It's a contradicting system that we've set up. And I think it's at least indirectly impacting, I think, the actions being taken by PURA and what should be taken, the actions that should be taken in a far more consumer-friendly manner, for that matter.
So I talked to Billy Mo Buckby during the week, and he's my representative in the 67th district. He's also, from what I understand, the ranking member of on the Energy Committee.
Yeah,
I have that right?
You do all of it
right.
correct.
And folks understand. Yeah, I would imagine, although we met in private, Billy would have no problem with me saying yes, he met with one of his constituents to answer questions. Right? I would imagine he would do that with any constituent that gave him an honest, hey Billy, I'd love to sit down with you and get some questions answered about this. And I think the way he explained it to me, and I'm going to use my own words, but I'm going to base this off of the conversation that we had, is that because PURA has to answer to DEEP, their interests, PURA, of protecting the consumer is necessarily at odds with DEEP's interests for green energy programs that necessarily increase rates, which are necessarily in conflict with the interests of the consumer. And that because PURA is forced to serve these two necessarily opposing, conflicting interests, the way he's explained it to me is, and I'm using my words, is that it represents a conflict of interest, and that the two the PURA as a body should not be under DEEP. Is that how you understand it?
I mean, he explained it, and you summarized his explanation. in a far better manner than what I try to explain it as. But that's exactly what I was trying to say, and he's spot on. It's two conflicting theories, and you are deep is really is stepping in the way of Pure being able to fully autonomize, the watchdog, consumer watchdog agency that, in my opinion, I'm sure Billy's opinion, they should be. That's essentially the best way to explain it.
Okay, so folks who are watching at home, we are going to get into your Q&A. I'm going to get to take some comments here because I don't see a whole lot of questions for Steve. But again, please share. I know the video is kind of crap right now, but I'm hoping the audio is coming through. It seems like everybody's saying the audio is coming up through okay, at least. So I guess this is basically an audio only podcast, which it's really what it needs to be. So please share this. Please share this to the group. This is where we're going to get your audience. This is how you have access to your elected officials. Steve has come out of his way to give us as much time as he can. I know it's not going to be for too much longer here, but please share, especially to that ban the public benefits charge page on Facebook, especially if you're watching on Facebook. Please share. Again, we had technical difficulties at the beginning of the stream, so I had to nuke the original and had to start completely over. If you're watching on YouTube, share to whatever you can so folks can join in. I know a lot of people are pissed off right now, and this is how you get answers. This is how you get access to your public elected officials. So we're diving into Q&A. Guys, put them in the comment section. If you're on YouTube, they don't allow the sharing of links, so you're going to have to go to Facebook. I'll do my best to get the Facebook link on YouTube, but if you got to share links, do it on the Facebook comments. Anyways, so let's see. Patricia Adams... sorry, that's related to the stream itself. Greg Mullen wants us to talk about the cost of Millstone. Greg, I'd love for you to expand on that question if you have a chance, if you're still watching with us. And Steve, what is the driver of the cost of Millstone? Why is the cost of Millstone what it is, both in the absolute, so the dollar amount that it is, and in the relative, the reason it's higher than certain other options?
So, Connecticut, by virtue of the legislature approving a measure back in, I believe it was 2017, contracted with Millstone and this nuclear energy provider that's located on the eastern side of the state, and contracted with Millstone to purchase their nuclear energy at 5 cents per gigawatt hour. And every year it's essentially examined in terms of how much more expensive or how less expensive that contract is compared to the market rate. And last year, because natural gas went up, I think many point to the war in Ukraine for much of that natural gas increase. Based upon that, the market rate went up, and therefore Millstone and the contract the state of Connecticut had with Millstone at 5 cents per kilowatt hour for nuclear energy actually was a better deal than what the market rate was essentially for natural gas. So the ratepayers of the state were provided a credit because we were paying less than what we would have been paying for market rate energy. This time around, because natural gas has gotten less expensive, the market rate has gotten less expensive, and the 5 cents per kilowatt hour that the state of Connecticut is contracted with Millstone for their nuclear energy is actually higher than what the market rate is, and therefore the public benefit charge went up because the ratepayers are forced to supplement the difference between the market rate and what we're being forced to pay.
So what Eversource could be buying from other generators at a lower rate. Right.
Correct.
So because of that, there's an opportunity cost to that Eversource is eating.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so
the ratepayer is paying for that cost.
So why even buy in the first place? Why not use a floating rate?
Well, that was related to the contract that was signed. The theory is, Millstone came to the legislature, and again, I voted against this. But I think, as I just explained, this year it turns out it's a bad deal for us. The previous year it actually was a good year for us. Millstone came to the state of Connecticut and said, "Look, we provide a lot of jobs in Eastern Connecticut. We also provide carbon-free energy." at a much more affordable cost than many other forms of carbon-free energy, such as wind and solar, which is coming in at 3 or 4 times the market rate, as opposed to Millstone, which is, maybe 1.5 times what the market rate is currently, approximately. But nevertheless, Millstone came to the state and said, "Look, we need predictability, and in order to continue to maintain our operations here in Connecticut, so we'll agree to keep our operations here if you agree to purchase a certain amount of our energy, our nuclear energy, at this 5 cents per kilowatt hour continuously, so that we can basically rely on this coming in. We can budget for it. We know no matter what goes on with the market and anything else that we're going to be getting this amount of money from you." So it's essentially what happened.
So the free marketeers, I'm sure, that are in the audience would respond with, well, why are we bailing them out? Why not just let them die and then allow for certain other energy producers, to just come in and start building?
Right. Well, I think the permitting process, et cetera, is so extensive in today's world here in Connecticut that you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of, energy producers, and particularly nuclear energy producers in the state of Connecticut that would get approved for the permitting necessary to generate the amount of energy.
Why not natural gas?
Well, there's some caveats to that. I have issues with natural gas in my district, moving south from New Milford into the substation at Iroquois, and the pipeline that goes basically less than a mile from my house, that I'm against the expansion of. Primarily, I'm against the expansion, one, because there are some hazards, obviously, that come along with that expansion. But number two, Connecticut receives zero benefit. So the residents that have to deal with some of these hazards get zero benefit from this pipeline expansion, in that we as Connecticut residents can't even tap into that pipeline and utilize that natural gas ourselves. It flows directly from, I believe, north of us, I'm assuming into Massachusetts and beyond, and goes right through Connecticut directly into underneath the Long Island Sound, as I understand it, into New York City and Long Island. So we don't receive any of these energy resources, which, again, I think natural gas is one of the things that people point to as a very affordable energy and environmentally efficient form of energy that could increase our supply and therefore reduce some of our rates. So you bring up a good point there.
So I sent you, in preparation for this, I think I sent you the legislation for Section 22A-200A. It's this statute, part of the statutes that lays out the 2020, 2030, 2040, and 2050 CO2 emissions threshold. Have you had a chance to review that briefly?
Yes, I have, and I'm familiar with it and was familiar with it. And that is a huge driver for the reason we're in the unaffordable position we're in. So through the legislation that you're referencing, Mike, we as in the state of Connecticut are forced to purchase certain amounts of zero emission, carbon free, green energy resources, some of it being wind and solar, which, as I mentioned before, is coming in at 3 or 4 times what the market rate is for energy right now. And that is all being baked into your energy cost and its public benefit charge. And I think some people have lost sight of that in their frustration with the public benefit charge and the increase that we've seen for Millstone in that. Millstone qualifies itself under that statute for certain levels of renewable energy and green renewable energy, and it does not have any carbon emissions. And as I mentioned before, it is like 3 or 4 times less than what wind and solar are. And we're currently under contract based upon the law that you just referenced to purchase different wind energy resources, which, as I mentioned, is 3 or 4 times what Millstone is. And so that's one of the reasons why the Senate Republican proposals in special session puts in a cap at these agreements, saying that you as being the state of Connecticut, the governor's office deep, can't contract with an energy resource for the ratepayers that is more than 2 times what the market rate is currently for energy. And as I said before, without that legislation being passed, we are in jeopardy of soon contracting as a state with wind energy resources that, as I mentioned, are coming in at 3 or 4 times what the market rate is. And all of our ratepayers, just like Millstone, but at 3 or 4 times more, are going to have to pay for that in their public benefit. So that was what my reference was earlier when I said this public benefit charge is only going to go up from here based upon what our current practices are.
Yeah, so what I have on screen now, for those of you who actually can see it, and it's on the recorded version, so folks, stay tuned. I'll upload the recorded version because that should be coming in just fine. Is a table from this is from what group is this? This is page 5. The Connecticut Energy and Environment, I think Commission. It's actually from DEEP. It's the GHG inventory, and on page 5, here we go. We have a graph of the economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions. So those benchmarks that I referred to are a benchmark of achieving the 10% reduction, 10% emissions below the 1990 levels in 2020. We just barely made that in time for 2020. And you can see it's a very, very shallow sloping graph. It's not a fast sloping graph. And then the 2030 thresholds are to achieve 45% below the 2001 thresholds by, again, 2030. I don't see how we achieve that, period. And then the 2050 goal is to get 80% below the 2001 thresholds. There's another 2040 benchmark that's not in this graph, but I don't know how we quite get there. And if we scroll down the page, at the bottom of the page, you can see where the greenhouse gas emissions are by sector. And you can see in transportation, it's basically flat. And then in residential, it's basically flat. And then in commercial, it's basically flat. And then in industrial, it's basically flat. And then in municipal waste, it's basically flat. And then in agriculture, it's basically flat. Maybe it's a little bit down. And in natural gas leakage, it's basically flat. And you have one part of the graph that seems to have declined. And that part of the graph is electricity consumption. And that's gone down from, 12.5. What is this? MMTCO2E. I have no idea what that means. But the number that they have here is 12.5 of whatever units they're using to measure those emissions levels, all the way down to, I'm going to use my cursor, and it looks like it's somewhere in the area of 3. So in that same time, we've reduced emissions from electrical consumption 4-fold. So it seems to me like the only way we're meeting these benchmarks, if I can bring them back up. There we go. If we bring up these benchmarks, the only way we're making through these benchmarks is through generation. And so the only way that we're going to do this is to effectively just say anything that produces any CO2 at all in terms of electricity, we're just not going to be buying from, period. And we're not going to allow in this state, period. So it seems like what Steve is saying has some merit to it. I mean, Steve, did you catch all that?
Yeah,
you can't see it.
You're right. And you do have merit to it. I mean, this is, and I think that was, not for nothing. That was part of the viewpoint of some of those that supported the Millstone legislation back then, was they were aware of these standards that were set in the legislature. And thought to themselves that, all right, if we're going to be moving down the path where we have to meet a certain level of emissions reduction, the only way that's going to be done in an actual affordable manner is by procuring, nuclear energy at this 5 cents a kilowatt hour, as opposed to losing that potentially and then forcing based upon these standards, then forcing the ratepayer to supplement wind and solar energy, which is coming in, as I mentioned, at 3 or 4 times what Millstone is. And so, that is another way to look at this. But again, these are all drivers that, no one wants to talk about in the legislature. And frankly, it should be budgeted within the state budget. If we're going to supplement these energy procurements, it should be done within the confines of the state budget. It shouldn't be baked into an energy cost, because there's no accountability for passing these policies, because it's baked into a rate, and so you have legislators running around to their districts, Mike, saying that they decreased taxes or that they didn't increase taxes, but meanwhile they're passing policies which are forcing the ratepayers on the electric grid to pay 3 or 4 times what the market rate is for some of these supplemental energy resources, and then baking it essentially into a hidden tax that we're being forced to pay in this public benefit. So again, I think a lot of that needs to be reexamined and see what we can do on an affordable basis. We have gotten to a point, Mike, where I have had people that have come up to me and said, Steve, that this was the final straw, that Connecticut was already unaffordable, property taxes were high, income taxes are high, and that they can't afford to live here any longer. And when they received that energy bill, the Eversource bill for many of them, the 2 people I spoke with determined they were going to leave and are working to put their house in the market and move. And the 2 people that I ran into, frankly, can't be the only 2 in the state that have that mindset. We have to do better. We have to make energy more affordable. And I think part of it is reevaluating those standards and seeing what we can do within an affordable range, because people can't continue to afford to supplement this program. It's just very obvious.
So, all right. So we're going to come back to that probably if you have time. Steve, you said you'd give me an hour. We're at an hour. Do you have time for a few more questions?
Just a couple more questions, then I got to run out. I got first day of school for the kiddos in the morning. So,
all right. Let's do 2 more then. We got one from Rich Andy. Where is it? So why are they so special? Plenty of businesses have to write off losses. Should Eversource just eat this?
I mean, this is part of the problem with the monopoly. We've created a system in which they're entitled to certain things, regulatory from a regulatory perspective, into having their costs paid for in some regard. Pura can continue to deny it, but the regulations that we've set up here, force them to eventually approve these supplements to pay off the cost, and I think this is once again a time, I believe, for Eversource to look within themselves and look at the ungodly amounts they're paying their executives and the profits they're bringing in, and determine, to Mike, to your point at the beginning of this show, whether or not this monopoly, frankly, that we've created is worth it for the consumers of the state. And I would argue that